it's the second longest surah in the Quran after Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, it's the second longest. These points are important, but I'll come to them later on as to why they are important. My aim today is to give an introduction to Surah An-Nisa and an overview. And in further weeks, maybe next week, we will finish the overview, and the third and fourth week, with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will look at certain aspects of Surah An-Nisa. We won't, of course, be able to cover it all in details. And therefore, I think the overview would give us a simple understanding of the surah as a whole. So, Bismillah. Okay. The surah itself, okay, to explain that it has gone through certain phases in terms of time. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah says, as for the adulteress and the adulterer, flog each of them with, this is actually in Surah An-Nur, but in this surah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as for those of your women who are guilty of gross immoral conduct, call upon 4 from among you to bear witness against them. If they so testify, then confine the guilty woman to their homes or to their houses until death takes them, or God opens another way for them. This is verse 15 from Surah An-Nisa. Another verse in Surah An-Nur came to provide another way for them. This has been abrogated. And in Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as for the adulteress and the adulterer, flog each of them with 100 stripes, and let not compassion with them keep you from carrying out this law of God. Okay, an example of how long it took that actually certain rules have changed, and this is an example of it. Okay. The other point about this surah is that it reflects, when you read the surah, you will clearly appreciate the effort that Islam has exerted to bring into being the new Muslim community. This new Muslim community that is emerging in Medina, okay, took a lot of effort for it to be organized, to be protected, and to come into being. And this is a good example in this surah. It's a good example to understand the influence of the Qur'an on this new emerging society. The Qur'an that we hold. Okay, so this surah will make us understand the impact of the Qur'an, the influence of the Qur'an, the print of the Qur'an on these new believers who have come from an ignorant society, who have come from a Jahiliyyah background, who have committed all sorts of atrocities, and worshipped and were pagans and worshipped many gods. And yet they have after becoming Muslims, they, over a period of time, of course, they have come to become the highest, the most noble, the most moral society that humanity has seen. This change did not just happen. This change took place through the tarbiyah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and through the instructions of the Quran, as is clearly evident in Surah An-Nisa. And therefore we will find that this Islam derives its distinctive characteristics from the Quran. Okay? And the surah shows us how Islam, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with man as such, okay, and took him from his lowest existence prior to Islam, from this muck in which the Arabs were living in, to the highest level of morality that is possible for humans to achieve. Okay. The Quran in this surah faces all the prevailing circumstances that that were there at the time of the birth of this new Muslim community. And don't think that Muslims, when they entered into Islam, they immediately became pure. No, they didn't. They carried their faults with them. They carried their traditions with them. They carried their beliefs with them. And it took time. It took time to address these issues. And I think one of the wisdoms, if you like, that we can see in this surah and in other surahs is that the Arabs at that time, compared to other nations, were the lowest of the low. Okay, they were really behind. Okay, they were not. They were not moral. They practiced all sorts of atrocities. They were illiterate. They represented depths of ignorance, ideologically speaking. Okay, intellectually, on the intellectual level, morally, they were behind. Socially, economically, and politically, they were really behind. And I think the wisdom is that here is a society that's really backward, that's really at the end of a human caravan, okay? And yet the Quran, through the Quran and through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this backward, immoral society managed to reach the zenith of human development and human morality and practice. And if it can happen to the Arabs, it can happen to everyone. If it can happen then, it can happen definitely now. Okay? And therefore, it is important to understand that when we stop now, we look at ourselves, don't think that we are pure, that we are complete, that we have reached the required level. No, within us, we are still carrying parts of ignorance, parts of the societies from which we have come from, part of the convictions that we had before, the convictions that are alien to Islam. Some of our traditions, for example, may be alien to Islam, may be inappropriate, okay, but they are still there within us. Why? Because we haven't addressed them, okay, and because we deal with the Quran as if though it's a book that's not for us, or it's a book that doesn't touch upon these issues. No, it does. And therefore, we need to compare ourselves to the Quran. We need to compare ourselves. For example, I'll just give you an example. When the Quran speaks about inheritance, okay, especially women having the right to inherit, to this day, there are people in our society, in the UK, okay, who do not give their sisters their rightful inheritance. And they deprive their sisters, their blood sisters, from their rightful inheritance. Okay, and they pray 5 times a day. Okay, so this double standard, this contradiction within ourselves and within our practices is there because there is a part of us that we submit to culture. There's a part of us that submits to other values other than the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. So in that sense, we are the same as the first Arabs who embraced Islam and who carried on being who they are before Islam. But the Quran addressed those issues. The Prophet ﷺ corrected those issues. There's an example. For example, Abadar, it is said that he said this to Bilal ibn Rabah. But the authentic hadith doesn't specify who Abadar said this to. But it is said that he said to Bilal ibn Sauda, "Oh, you, the son of the black woman." Okay. And Bilal wasn't very happy, and he reported this to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet, when he met Abadar, he said to him, "Abadar, you are a man that has ignorance in him, that has jahiliyyah in him. Abadar is a Muslim. Abadar is a companion. But inside him, there are certain issues that have not yet taken on Islam, okay, in its totality." Okay, so likewise, in ourselves, there will be part of us that we still haven't corrected, if you like, haven't Islamicized, haven't turned into Islam. Okay, so we need to be certain about this. Okay. Now, the other important point that the surah reflects, okay, is that man is constant. Okay, the same companions to whom this Quran was revealed, okay, the same companions that the Quran corrected and trained and taught, okay, they are human beings like us. They are subject to the same issues that we ourselves are subject to. Okay. 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 Someone muted my microphone. Anyway, I hope you're hearing me. Alhamdulillah. Okay.
Alhamdulillah, we can hear you, Sheikh. Yes, Alhamdulillah. Apologize. I had to mute the sister. She had unmuted herself accidentally. Jazakallah khair. Sorry about that.
No problem, inshallah. No problem. No problem. No worries. Okay. Yes, where was I? Okay. Yes, man is constant. Okay. He doesn't really change. His basic needs, his desires, his hopes, his wants don't change. His circumstances do change. There's a difference between us living in a Muslim country, for example, in Arabia or in Pakistan, and us now living in the UK. But we are, in essence, the same. The circumstance changes. And the miracle of the Quran, the uniqueness of the Quran, is that it addresses these changes, okay, but it deals constantly with man and provides constant solutions, okay. And its uniqueness is that even though it is specific, but it is able to accommodate the changing circumstances of man, and as such it is valid for all time, for all places. You'll find the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran are valid for all times and for any place you're in, whether you're in Pakistan, whether you're in the United States of America, whether you're in Manchester or Oldham or wherever you are, Islam is valid for you. Okay? The surah moves with clear determination to erase all aspects of that ignorant society. You have this society, these new Muslims that have embraced Islam, okay, and they have come into Islam with all their faults, with all their mistakes, with all their beliefs, like Abu Dharr, and he had some jahiliyyah in him, so it needed to be corrected, it needed to be erased, and something else replaces it. And therefore, we will find, we'll come to the point I made at the beginning, we will find that to do this, it took quite a long time. Okay? It took a long time, and it took a very long surah to do it. Okay? So the issue of correcting all the faults that we have brought with us into our new commitment in Islam needs to be revised. There are certain things in me that I need to revise. Why? Because they're there in my system, but I haven't looked at them from my new perspective. And therefore, when I read the Quran, I ought to apply it to myself. The Quran is not just the book that was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. No, the Quran is a book that was revealed to all generations, all people, including ourselves. It tells us about ourselves, because man, in essence, is the same. We're the same. Okay? And therefore, when you read the Quran, it is about you. Especially when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu, O you who believe. So if you consider yourself amongst those who believe, then you have to listen to what follows, because what follows is meant for you. And you'll find that this surah starts with Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing mankind generally, yourself included. The Quran is not just a book of stories that amuse us, or a book of some sort of mystic things that help us overcome fear or overcome disease or sickness, or ta'weed, a book of ta'weed, or a book of mystic things that we don't really understand. No, it's a book that tells us how to live, how to conduct ourselves, how to elevate ourselves from from being the lowest of the low to becoming very highly morally motivated individuals, up there, not down there. And therefore, it is important to deal with the Quran as if though it's a living thing. And when you read this surah, subhanallah, when you read Surah An-Nas, you feel that Surah An-Nas is a living being. It reacts with you. It reacts with your life. It reacts with your being. Okay? Okay. Now, the other point and the other thing about this Surah An-Nas, is that the Islamic system, which includes, of course, Surah An-Nisa, the Surah of women, the fourth Surah in the Quran, the system here, through the Quran and through the Hadith text that explains it, is able to take the human being, whether these humans are individuals or whether they are a collective community, a nation, an ummah, a community, a society, hand by hand, okay, from whatever level they are in. And here we're not just talking about the companions, we are talking about ourselves as well, okay, because it applies to us, because humans are the same, okay. It takes us and anyone that lives according to it, hand by hand, to whatever level they are in. And we couldn't be worse than the Jahiliyyah, the Arabs before Islam. We couldn't be worse than them, okay. So we're higher than them, okay. But they have managed to reach a level that we haven't reached. So they have crossed a bigger gap than we need to cross, okay, because they reacted with the Quran. They reacted with this living being, with this surah. And if we did the same, if we reacted with the Surah An-Nisa and all the other and the rest of the Quran, of course, in the same way that they did, we would reach their level, okay, intellectually, spiritually, socially, morally, politically. We will indeed, but we do not react with it the same way. And this is a key thing. And the Quran, subhanallah, and in its way, takes us and leads us to the highest level that is possible for humans to attain. But it does this in a very gentle way, in a very kind way, in a very subtle way. And it does it step by step. This is an important point. We do not jump from where we are to where we hope to become just like that. It doesn't happen. We need to work hard. We need to go step by step. We need to be gentle with ourselves, okay? As is Islam is gentle with us and kind with us and aims to take us step by step. We should accept that and do it. And therefore, even if I can implement the laws of Islam, especially al-hudud, al-hudud are the punishments, okay? If I can implement them in any Muslim society today on earth, okay, if I can come and just tomorrow announce the laws of Islam and Sharia and Khilafah and whatever, okay, does this mean that we can implement the laws of Islam right away? No, we can't. Why not? Because the people are not ready. They have not been trained. They have not been taken step by step. For example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with khamra, with alcohol, He did not make it haram immediately. Okay. First of all, He said that there is some benefit in it, and there is harm in it, and its harm is greater than its benefit. The companions continued to drink alcohol. Then there was an incident, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed that no one should pray, go to namaz, while he is drunk. And therefore the companions drunk at times to ensure that by the time there is a salah, they would have sobered back again. They continued to drink. And then eventually came the prohibition of khamra. So it didn't happen just like that. In fact, Aisha radwanullahi alayha, she says that if the first thing from the Quran that was revealed was do not drink alcohol, i.e. alcohol is haram, no one would have entered Islam. Therefore, we need to understand that we have to deal with these issues step by step. We have to deal with them gently and with kindness and with care and with love. We cannot deal with them just like that. Okay. So when we speak of ignorant societies, what do we mean? Uh, we are, of course, not referring to the conditions that might have prevailed during a particular period of history. Ignorant is every society in which human beings are subjugated by others. Okay? Any society in which humans look up to other humans for their moral reference, their frame of reference is another human. Okay? The values are set by other human beings. Their beliefs is dictated by other human beings. Uh, they are subjected in that sense to other human beings. That is an ignorant society. An Islamic society is a society in which the frame of reference is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and no one else. So under all the existing systems on earth today, it is an ignorant society, a society that is not subjugated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but is subjugated to others. Therefore, you'll find values change. Values change in society. At one time, for example, homosexuality wasn't acceptable. And today, they see it as normal. Dealing with women, for example, when inheriting, when women inherited in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them their fair inheritance, which comes very early on in Surah An-Nisa. Okay, a woman, a woman whose father passes away, inherits half the share of her brother, her blood brother. Her brother gets, let's say, 100 units. She gets 50 units. Today, many non-Muslims, and many Muslims as well, will question, why would she get half? Why? Because they're coming from a certain background whose values have been set by other human beings. Okay? If we went back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and even before the time of the Prophet, the Jahiliyyah, the Quraysh, and someone suggested that women should inherit, and someone suggested that a woman, why don't you let women inherit half of what a man inherits? They would have risen up to him and said to him, why does a woman need to inherit at all? Why? Because they're coming from their own man set frame of reference, okay, that deals in that way with women. Remember, man is man. Okay, that's the circumstances, the frame of reference, that what prevails in society that dictates these people's values. And therefore, as Muslims, we are the only society that is truly free. Why? Because we refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. Because we are free from subjugation by other people. Why? Because we receive our concepts and our principles and our values and our standards and our legislations and traditions from whom? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And this is very evident in the Surah An-Nisa. Okay, and that is quite an important point, because indeed, okay, it is only to God that they bow, only God's law that they obey, and to God alone that they submit. This is the Islamic society, a society that has understood and has lived the Quran. Okay, It's not just about memorizing the Quran or reciting the Quran or, celebrating the fact that we have finished reading the Quran. Okay, we should really celebrate implementing the Quran, understanding it and applying it to our lives, because it liberates us from being subjugated to other human beings and their values and their laws and their way of living and their way of thinking. Okay. It is well known that every order, prohibition, or directive in the Quran was issued in response to a practical situation pertaining in the ignorant society. Anything that happens, okay, a man says to his wife, you are forbidden for me as is the back of my mother. Okay, this has actually happened. The Quran comes to reveal something about this. Okay, so the reason these verses were revealed were because of this specific incident that happened, and that was practiced in the time of ignorance, practiced in the time of Jahiliyyah. However, the general rule is that general application supersedes special circumstances. The ruling of the verse is not limited to the specific incident that happened, but is general and is applicable to that incident and applicable elsewhere and applicable at other times as well. And we need to understand this. Quranic texts are meant to be implemented throughout all
Yeah.
generations and
तफसीर
all
कुरान में
communities.
ऑनलाइन होकर
Here,
आते हैं ना.
here we see the miracle of Islamic approach. Okay, that even though the Quran, the verses were revealed to face a specific incident that has happened, okay, but the verses itself are uh, put in a way that is applicable generally and for every time and in anywhere that the situation, that a similar situation may be faced. So what do we find in this surah of the features of the ignorant society? What is it about the surah that speaks about the ignorant society, the society of Quraysh or the society of Mecca before Islam, which remained extant in the first Muslim community, which the Muslim community carried with them, brought with them, okay, when they became Muslim, and it required addressing over this period of time using a very lengthy surah. And what it is that Islam, what features is Islam trying to implement and bring about in this new emerging Islamic society? The first thing we see addressed is the rights of orphans. Orphans have rights, okay? Especially orphans who are female, girls' orphans. They're more likely to be wronged than boys' orphans, plundered by the very relatives and guardians who were supposed to look after them. For example, an orphan might, just as an example, let's give a simple example, may have a sheep, may be you know, fat and well groomed. Okay, so the guardian will take that sheep, and then when it's time to give it to give the orphan his right, he would give him a very frail, weak sheep instead, and he would say, a sheep for a sheep. I got a sheep from him, and this is a sheep. Or he will take a good piece of land that has trees, fruit trees in it, and is you know in a good place, and he would give him another piece of land that doesn't have fruit trees in it, or that is not really desirable, and he will say land for a land, or you know, he would give him a coin that is not worth much when he has taken from him a golden coin, and say a coin for a coin. Okay, they used to do this, and the Quran and this surah came to stop this practice. Okay. Also, young and rich orphan girls were detained at home until they could be married to their guardians. The guardians would marry these orphan girls, not because they love them, not because they want to take care of them, but simply because they want to control and lay their hands on their money and their property. Okay, the Quran came to stop this practice, and you will find from even the beginning, that the Quran has addressed itself to social injustice. Many parts of the Quran deal with social injustice, and that it is haram, and that these practices is haram. So this is one aspect of the Quran that deals with these issues that we need to look at as part of the study of Surah An-Nisa. Okay, very, very important, inshallah. Okay. Also, women were wronged and not given their rightful share of any inheritance. Women, in fact, in some cases, women were inherited themselves. For example, when a man dies, his son could lay claim to his father's wife, okay, and do with her what he wanted. Okay, she became as if though she was a property belonging to the man who has passed away, and therefore it is the right of the son to inherit her. Okay, from that situation to actually women having a right to inherit. And Islam, in this surah, from the beginning, Islam specifies the amount women inherit in different situations. What does a wife inherit from her husband? What does a daughter inherit from her father? What does a sister inherit? And so on and so forth. And this notion, by the way, that a woman inherits half of what a man inherits is not always true. There are situations where a woman inherits the same amount as the man, and there are situations where a woman may inherit even more than what another man may inherit, given, of course, the different relations that they hold with the person that they are inheriting. Okay. Okay, I think I will stop here, inshallah, for and continue next week to see if you've got any comments or questions that we could answer, inshallah. I hope this session has been useful. As I said, it's an introduction to Surah An-Nisa. Useful. As I said, it's an introduction to Surah An-Nisa. with an overview, and by next week, inshallah, we will start looking at the specific verses that deal with specific matters to further enforce the points that I have made up to now. Okay. Barakallahu fikum.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh. Thank you so much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. The next session is actually tomorrow, isn't it? I think
Yes,
it's
tomorrow, inshallah, 7 o'clock.
Tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Same time, same place. I'll resend the link out just in case anybody misplaces it. But Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, until tomorrow, 7 p.m. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.